One game that means a lot to me, and I enjoyed the hell out of it growing up, was Duke Nukem 3D. Now, this game was, just like I said, in that era where the 3D was just kind of making its move. You know, there was a lot of first-person shooters that were like evolving as we went on. But one thing they all had in common was they used kind of the same formula, kind of like Doom did and Quake and all that stuff. It looked like when Duke came out, I think it was like the early 90s. This game was just changing it up a bit. You know, it's adding different characters, it's adding different enemies, and the levels, you could tell, were getting better, like on the design. So this was like piggybacking off a traditional formula, but it was just so much fun, and it was very unique for the time, and this is why. The character itself, I mean, like I said, when I first went to find this game, I remember seeing it in a store, and the cover like kind of drew me in, with the guy on top, you know, this big buff guy with the glasses, the hair, you know, just dual guns in hand, you know, shoot some aliens, and it's like, I've seen this cover before. It turns out it's kind of like a copy of Doom, but again, at the time, you know, Doom was like the formula, so a lot of games were kind of using that idea, that look, you know, to draw people in. But anyway, the character, though, was completely his own. Like, Duke Nukem himself was a pretty badass guy. And like I said, at that time, you know, you wanted to be like a soldier, some kind of really badass mercenary kind of guy, and Duke kind of fit that mold. I always told people, your character, whoever you play, you know, you got to get behind that. You got to have something that draws you in, and Duke definitely had that kind of aura to him. But one thing I loved about the game itself was they gave him some really good quotes, you know. It's like some things were hilarious, it's controversial, but at the same time, it was funny. One character you could really enjoy playing as and just kind of laugh at it. You know, some of the quotes they gave the character were kind of funny. You could tell they were stolen from some movies, but that's okay, you know. It was all stuff like we really enjoyed and grew up on. He would say things, a lot of times if you blew creatures up or you killed something, you know, he would just make some smart-ass comment. Like, I remember one time shooting a rocket into a group of aliens, and he'd be like, "Let God sort them out." You know, just stuff like that. It was, I don't know, it was kind of funny. When we first got the game, I remember I was unaware of it at all. Like I said, I came into this game kind of late. I didn't understand, you know, where it came from, I didn't play the original. I just saw Duke Nukem 3D when it finally got released to the N64, actually. And at this time, like I said, that's where I found a lot of games, because we didn't grow up having a lot on our PC. We didn't have a really high-end PC to run games at that time. And like I said, we used it for like office stuff. So unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of PC gaming at this time, but we were playing more on console, and that's where I came across this game. When we got into the game, we fell in love actually with the deathmatch mode right out of the gate, because you play up to 4 people, which, like I said, at that time was new for us, because N64, you know, had that ability. A lot of times me and my friend played a lot of games co-op wise, and we enjoyed putting the bots in there and just kind of killing each other, killing the bots, and going to the different levels, because they had really cool stage designs. So we love that right out of the gate. But then we found out that there's a campaign kind of multiplayer to it, so you could play the whole game through co-op and kill all the aliens and go through the levels, and it was fun. It was just a lot of fun to play. There was different difficulties, which added, you know, more challenge to it, more enemies to kill. So depending on like how you felt, you know, on your skill level, that was nice to have. This game, in the maps and the design that the developers did, it definitely stands out. This game has a cartoony, but it's like I could play on any of the maps, and I could definitely tell you it's a Duke Nukem. It just has artwork, and the style was very unique for the time. And one thing I will say that games in that time didn't do, some of them did, not a lot. They didn't use interactable or explosive or destructible environments a lot of times. Like some walls you couldn't blow up, and you could shoot the fire extinguishers on the wall and create things. And it was just kind of cool to see, like, if I shoot a rocket down here, not only will I kill the aliens, or I can make a different pathway out of here, I could, you know, use the environment to my advantage. as a weapon or to find different secrets in the game. And speaking of that, they had a lot of cool secrets to unlock, so that was always good at that time because you wanted replay value. And there's only so much content they could put into the games, and not only was it just fun just to play and go back and beat the levels and the game on different difficulties, I thought it was cool they put some little hidden pathways and secrets and things you can unlock. So you're always like looking around corners and feeling the walls and see if something opens, or shooting things to see if you can make a different pathway somewhere and discover something new. Going back saying that I was playing it on the N64 at the time, I was not aware of this at all on the PC. And I remember going to a buddy of mine, his house, and his dad had a gaming PC at that time. And then he had his own PC that was nowhere close to his dad's, but the fact they had two PCs in the house was kind of cool. And I remember his dad was a big fan of first-person shooters. At the time, I think he was playing Half-Life that came out, and that was the big craze at the time. And I was still playing these older video games, and I mentioned something about Duke Nukem, and he's like, sure, I have it on my PC. This kind of like opened my eyes to how something I knew very, very well could be so different. Playing it on the PC just had a whole different feel to the game. And also they gave, I feel like some of the guns, there was like 2 or 3 from the console they changed around. I'm not sure why, but the Gatling gun in the PC was like a 3-barrel, with one hand grip on the side, and it was a pretty badass weapon. And then, but on the N64 console, they had the submachine guns. You had like dual submachine guns. Also, the rocket launcher looked a little different in both settings. I remember on the PC version, there was these rockets you could shoot. Not just the rocket launcher, but they added this. They look like gloves you put on, and they could shoot mini rockets from side to side. Like, man, what a cool gun and what a cool design. Like that idea. It's just like having, you go through an area and you want to talk about shredding a whole group of aliens that were like lined up coming after you. Those things were wicked. I noticed how the fluent of the movement, the graphics looked a little different. The explosions were realistic. Obviously with the PC you could put more content in it. There was a few extra levels that I wasn't exposed to. Again, the PC would always remain the more dominant, gaming style, because like I said, it could run things a lot better than the consoles ever could. But then that made me wonder, going down the road, when something would come out for the console, I might actually look for it on PC now, because I know the limits of the console, the whole experience of playing the PC version. At the time, you hope you had a PC. Like I said, it didn't take much to run this game. I think it was like an MS-DOS game at the time. A lot of the characters were really cool. I remember the Battle Lords were hard as hell to kill. They're pretty much these giant creatures that could take a beating. Like, you could hit them with rockets and grenades and the whole 9 yards. But they had like all this armor on. They had, red eyes, and they had this giant Gatling gun that would just mow you down. And depending on the difficulty, I mean, it didn't take much, and you were dead. So those are a pain in the butt. And sometimes there was multiple ones on the maps, depending on the difficulty you were on. So to wrap this up, I know there was later Duke Nukems that came out, that had the open world, kind of more of it worked on the 3D realm. But for some reason, I never got into those. I was always a fan of the old school run around, the graphics didn't bother me at that time, but just there's just like a feel for this. I couldn't explain it, but it was, I don't know, the classic's always going to be the place I go. Like, this is the only kind of Duke Nukem I'll ever want to play. I just thought the idea was all right, that they were trying something new, but just something about, like I said, the design and the levels, it just stands out. Like, this is how it was meant to be. This is how it was meant to be played. I just always go back for the old school PC, like 3D era. When they came out, like later on for the PlayStation, I believe it was. It just didn't have that feel to me. And nothing wrong with the game. I'm not hating on it. I just different people have different feels and want to play it differently. And maybe it's a nostalgic thing. Maybe it's just because I played this years and years ago, and this is my introduction to the whole franchise and to the character. And I always have like that special like feel when I go back and play it, just of that time period. If you like shooters of any kind, like especially the old school ones, this is definitely one you got to do a playthrough.